So in one of my previous videos, we touched on the concepts of World War III battle lines. And that's not just in kinetic means, but also in economic means. So let's go ahead and take a read of this article in that context. The UAE-based ADNOC has announced a 15-year agreement to supply LNG to an Indian Oil Corporation, Ltd, Indian Oil, at a rate of 1 million tons per year. The supply will come from the Ruwais LNG project expected to commence operations in 2028. This deal with Indian Oil is part of a broader strategy by ADNOC, which has secured long-term LNG sales agreements with international partners for over 70% of Ruwais LNG's productivity capacity. India is a key strategic partner for the UAE, and this agreement highlights ADNOC's commitment to providing secure, low-carbon energy to support India's energy security needs. It also reinforces confidence in Ruwais LNG project, a cornerstone of our plan to expand ADNOC's global footprint in the LNG market. By 2029, Indian Oil is expected to become the largest buyer of LNG from the UAE, with annual purchases reaching 2.2 million tons. ADNOC also recently sold a 40% stake in Ruwais LNG to four companies, with British Shell, BP, France's Total Energies, and Japan's Mitsui, each acquiring a 10% share in the project. So we see a partnership between the UAE and Indian Oil, and between the UAE and Western countries. Now let's take a look at that in the context of India, Russia, and Chinese relations, if I can find that post here. It may take a minute to find. Let me go ahead and Control F, India. I think it's only going to search that. Let me search in here, India. There's that. I know I saved another post in here. There's a partnership forming between the UAE, between India, China, and Russia, which I find very peculiar. Of course, I can't find it now. There's an economic alliance forming between Russia, India, and China, which is very interesting in the context of relations between India and China. As you've probably heard over the last several years, India and China have literally had fistfights in border regions, in the mountains, between India and China. Things that perhaps they were sensationalized by Western media, but nonetheless, you see the armies, the military groups of these two countries having fistfights. And I believe even some Indian personnel being deleted by Chinese personnel. And yet, overcoming those things and coming to agreements that weaken the West's power on the world and control on the world. It is not insignificant. Here we go, I found it. India, China, and Russia to jointly build massive nuclear power plant on the moon, supposedly, to establish a future human lunar colony. India and China, two historically rival nations, as I was just saying, are set to collaborate with Russia in establishing a nuclear power plant on the moon. This development, reported by Eurasia Times and sourced from Russia's state-owned news agency TASS, was announced by Alexei, whatever that name is, head of Rosatom, Russia's state nuclear energy corporation. The initiative aligns with India's plans for a manned lunar mission by 2040 and the establishment of a lunar base. In the context of this, we see China trying to get its space program going to and many failures. We know from Russia's history, they've been into space already. And we see India has desires to get there. And they're overcoming their rivalries and their history to work together on this joint initiative. That is very telling about some things. Pivoting away from relations with the West and pivoting towards collaboration with their nearby countries. It is not insignificant. In fact, it's very, very significant in the context of the world. And we must be aware of these events because it means there's going to be impact. If doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, then doing something different will lead to a different result, and expecting things to remain the same is insane. You cannot have that first statement be true without the latter statement being true. And it is true because if you have an output that's happening, upstream of that, you have a set of inputs that are happening, inputs and outputs. And anytime you change one of those inputs, a variable, you will change the output, sometimes slightly, sometimes massively. So this relationship will have a massive impact on the world and on your life at some level. It will have an impact. To what degree, only time will tell. There's a lot of variables that go into that output of your life. And that's all I have for this one. Until next time, stay exponentially aware.